Hello from Mindset Daily, wishing you a day full of health, peace, and happiness. Thank you for watching the Mindset Daily channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe to support us. Thank you so much. Have you ever felt like your whole world was falling apart and you had no idea why? What if the collapse wasn't punishment, but preparation? And what if rock bottom was actually the foundation of something divine? Sometimes, God allows everything around you to fall apart, not to harm you, but to reposition you. When the walls of comfort suddenly collapse and the familiar turns strange, it can feel like everything is unraveling. But that's often when His deepest work begins. Many of us see rock bottom and assume it's the end of the story. The truth? It may be the exact place God starts writing a brand new chapter. But what if rock bottom is not your ending? What if it's the solid ground God plans to build something stronger, truer, and more lasting upon? We don't welcome the fall. We push back against the breaking. We cry out, overwhelmed and confused, desperate for answers. Why did they walk away? Why did everything I built fall apart? Why am I left sitting in the ruins of what used to be my life? But in that pain, in that eerie silence, where no hands reach out and no applause is heard, God is not distant. He is close. He isn't standing far off, watching from above. He's right there with you, in the dust and in the ache, whispering, "Now I can begin again." While the world teaches that success moves in a straight, upward line, heaven rarely works that way. Heaven moves through surrender, through pruning, through seasons of stillness and storms that refine rather than destroy. And when everything crashes down, when your pride is stripped away and your plans lie shattered, God is not angry. He's not disappointed. He's preparing you, because He can't bless the version of you that's just a performance. He blesses the real you, the broken, honest, surrendered you. He blesses the ones who cry out not with perfect words, but with groans too deep for language. And when your world collapses, the enemy will try to whisper, "It's over." But it's not. It's only just beginning. The enemy will point to your ashes and whisper, "Look at what's left of you." He'll try to convince you that you're too broken, too far gone, too empty to begin again. But hear this, God doesn't need a palace to build His kingdom. He can start with ashes. He doesn't require applause, approval, or the illusion of strength. What He's looking for is your yes. Even if it's shaky, even if your eyes are filled with tears, even if that yes comes from the lowest, loneliest place you've ever known, it's enough. Because a trembling yes whispered from rock bottom carries more weight in heaven than 1,000 victories screamed from the mountaintop. Some of you listening right now, you've walked through fire. You've faced heartbreak, loss, and despair. You've watched everything familiar fall apart. You've lost your home, your peace, maybe even your sense of purpose. But you're still here. You're still breathing. And that breath in your lungs? It's not random. It's not meaningless. It's proof that heaven has not given up on you. God sees the ashes, but He also sees the beauty that's about to rise from them. He has a plan that doesn't ignore your pain, but doesn't end in it either. Just because the chapter you're living feels like failure doesn't mean it's your final one. He's not just the author of your faith. He's the author and finisher of your healing, your restoration, and your calling. Some of the strongest roots grow from the lowest places, beneath the soil, in darkness, hidden from view. So when life buries you under layers of loss, rejection, or disappointment, don't assume it's the end. You're not dead. You're planted. And what's planted has a purpose. If you hold on, if you refuse to quit, you will rise again. Not as the person you were, but as someone stronger, wiser, more surrendered. The storm wasn't meant to destroy you. It was meant to uncover you, to strip away everything temporary so that what is eternal could finally take root. God doesn't shape His strongest warriors through comfort. He shapes them in the wilderness, in the waiting, in the weakness. You may have fallen, but listen closely. Falling is not the end. This is where the rebuilding begins. And here's the truth. What God rebuilds is always stronger than anything man ever built. When He lays the foundation, no storm, no betrayal, no loss can shake it. His work is unshakable because it's rooted in truth, not illusion. So don't despise the breaking. Don't curse the collapse. Sometimes things had to fall apart, not to ruin you, but to reveal that you were building on unstable ground. You may have been leaning on people who were never meant to hold that much weight, depending on plans that looked good on paper but couldn't carry the weight of your destiny. And in His mercy, not His judgment, God allowed it to all come crashing down. Not to shame you, but to save you. To show you, once and for all, that He alone is your source, your strength, your solid foundation. So if today you find yourself on the ground, don't stay there wrapped in shame. Don't let the rubble define your worth. Lift your head, wipe your tears, and listen, because God isn't calling you to recreate what once was. He's calling you to become something new. Not to rise with the old tools of survival, but to rebuild with fresh trust. Not to carry the old identity you wore in brokenness, but to step forward with a renewed heart and mind. Because some things simply can't come with you into your future, no matter how tightly you grip them, no matter how familiar or even justified they may feel. If they're crushing you from the inside, they must go. Rebuilding isn't just about laying new bricks. It starts with clearing away the broken ones that caused the collapse in the first place. And let me tell you, there's no way to rebuild on top of bitterness. You can't move forward if you're dragging the heavy chains of resentment behind you. You can't step into the new life God is offering if you're still clutching the wreckage of what destroyed you. We often think healing is just about adding more good to our lives. But sometimes, healing begins through subtraction, by letting go. Painful? Yes. But necessary? Absolutely. And I know, it's hard to let go of what hurt you. Because in a strange way, our wounds become our armor. They feel like protection, even as they weigh us down. We cling to memories as if they were trophies, proof that we survived, reminders of what we endured. We replay old conversations in our minds, relive betrayals, and nurse anger like it's a badge of honor. We tell ourselves that holding on makes us strong, that if we let go, we're letting them win. But here's the truth. There is no strength in being shackled to the past. There's no real power in dragging the dead weight of offense into the doorway of your future. Bitterness doesn't protect you. It binds you. And no matter how justified it feels, it won't carry you where you're meant to go. Forgiveness isn't about excusing what they did. It's not about pretending the pain didn't happen. It's about setting yourself free. You might never hear the words, "I'm sorry." You may never witness their regret or see them take responsibility. But does your peace really need to wait for their apology? Your healing cannot be tied to their repentance. That part, that's between them and God. But for you, for your soul, your freedom, your job is to release it. Your calling is to let go, so that God can place something better, something healing, into your empty hands. There's a reason God tells us not to repay evil with evil. It's not only a moral standard, it's a lifeline for your soul. Because when you hold on to hate, it spreads like a toxin. It touches everything, your thoughts, your relationships, your future. It clouds your vision until you can't see clearly. It hardens your spirit until you no longer recognize your own heart. It binds you, not just to what happened, but to the person you never wanted to become. And slowly, the pain begins to define you. The offense becomes your identity. That kind of life, that bitter, guarded, constantly suspicious life, is not what you were created for. God did not form you in love only to have you live in chains. You were created to walk in freedom, light, unburdened, full of grace, and overflowing with love. That's who you are at your core. But to walk that way, you have to make a choice. You have to choose to lay down what broke you. That doesn't mean you ignore it. That doesn't mean you pretend it didn't happen. No, the pain was real. The wound was deep. But here's the truth. You can't live there. You can't make a permanent home in a place that was only meant to be a passage. Grieve if you need to. Cry if the tears still come. But when the time comes, rise. Wipe your face. And don't keep looking back over your shoulder as if your future is back there somewhere in the pain. It's not. Some of you have been crying out to God, begging Him to restore your peace. But you're still clinging tightly to the very thing that shattered it. You're longing for the next chapter to begin, but your heart remains tied to a door that God has already closed. You're praying for healing, but with every breath, you're still rehearsing the hurt. And gently, lovingly, God is saying, "My child, I cannot fill hands that are already full. I cannot bless a heart that's still wrapped in chains of bitterness. I cannot pour new wine into an old wineskin that hasn't been surrendered. So release it. Let it go. Release the offense. Release the betrayal. Release the guilt, the shame, the anger, the emotions that scream for justice but steal your peace. It doesn't matter how justified it feels. If it's robbing you of your destiny, it's not worth holding on to. It may feel like letting go means losing something, but in truth, it means gaining everything. Peace, clarity, healing. They all begin the moment you finally whisper, "God, I surrender this to you. I will no longer carry what was never mine to bear." And to the one who's been silently blaming yourself for how it all turned out, hear this clearly. Let that go too. You're not perfect, but perfection was never God's requirement. His grace was, and always will be, enough. Stop punishing yourself for choices you made when you were doing the best you could with what you knew. Stop replaying the what-ifs, the if-onlys. God's grace covers all of it. You cannot change your past, but by the power of God, you absolutely can change your future. Don't let pain reshape your identity. Don't let betrayal mold you into someone cold, distant, or guarded. That's not who you were meant to become. Don't let disappointment become the doorway to doubt. Don't let it cloud your vision or convince you that you're less than who God created you to be. You were made in the image of God, full of value, purpose, and divine potential. And no mistake you've made, no wound you've suffered, no betrayal you've endured can ever erase that truth. But here's what you must decide. You can no longer live chained to what they did. You can no longer give your strength, your time, or your peace to something God has already removed from your life. This is your season to release it. Not later. Not someday when the pain fades. Not when they come back and apologize. Now. Because now is when God wants to pour new strength into you. Now is when He's ready to do a new thing. Not built on the ashes of resentment, but from the solid ground of surrender. The rebuilding doesn't begin with perfection. It begins with a decision. A decision to trust, to let go, to stop clinging to what's already behind you. And when you finally release it, truly release it, you'll find something you may have forgotten even existed. Peace. Real peace. Not the kind the world tries to sell you. Not temporary relief, not distraction, but deep, soul-level peace. The kind that settles you. The kind that anchors you. We live in a world that's louder than it's ever been. Voices are coming at you from every angle. Social media, news, expectations, opinions, noise, constant noise. They all shout about who you should be, what you should chase, how you should live. It's overwhelming, isn't it? But when you're rebuilding your life, when you're trying to find your footing again, you can't afford to listen to all that noise. You need stillness. You need clarity. And most of all, you need to hear the voice of the one who created you. There's one voice you need above all others, the voice of God. Not the loudest voice in the room, not the most popular, the right voice. There's a stillness, a sacred quiet place in your soul where God speaks. Not in chaos, not in noise, but in peace. Yet you'll never find that place if your mind is constantly flooded with the chatter of the world. You can scroll endlessly through your phone, jumping from post to post, but still feel hollow. You can surround yourself with people, friends, crowds, fans, and still feel painfully alone. You can be praised by thousands, standing in the spotlight, and still feel completely lost inside. Why? Because true peace doesn't come from being heard by people. It comes from hearing the one who created you. Too many are exhausted today, not because they're overworked, but because they're overstimulated, pulled in every direction by too many voices, too many opinions. And let me tell you, you can't rebuild your life on that. You can't find solid ground when your foundation is shaped by public opinion. You cannot discover your identity in applause or external validation. Because the moment your worth becomes tied to someone else's approval, you lose control. You become a slave to their ever-changing expectations. And people, let's be honest, are fickle. One day they're cheering you on. The next day they're criticizing every step. One moment they stand with you. The next they vanish without a trace. But God? He's not like that. He doesn't operate like man. His view of you doesn't shift with the seasons or sway with public opinion. He doesn't change his mind about you when things get hard. His love is steady. His calling is constant. God's love isn't conditional. His purpose for you isn't based on popularity. It's anchored in His divine plan. And when He speaks, His voice does more than give direction. It brings transformation. He doesn't just tell you what to do. He reminds you of who you really are. And in that quiet space, When you finally turn down the volume of the world and lean into His presence, you'll hear truth. Not the kind of truth that just makes you feel better, but the kind that sets you free. The kind that cuts through every lie you've believed, every fear you've carried, and every label the world tried to put on you. He whispers, "You are still mine. You are not forgotten. You are not too broken. I still have a plan for you." That's what happens when you finally reconnect with the source. That's what happens when you return to the one who never left. But if you want to hear Him clearly, you have to make room. You must be intentional about creating sacred space in your life. Space in your day, in your heart, in your mind, where everything else is quieted. No phones, no notifications, no pretending, just you and God. Just real presence, raw honesty, and open surrender. That's where rebuilding truly begins. Not with a 5-step plan to success, not with striving or noise, but with silence, with stillness, with a heart that simply says, "Lord, I'm listening." When you've been broken, when you've hit bottom, when the people you trusted most have walked away, it's natural to start searching for answers in desperation. You just want clarity. You want to know why. Why did this happen? Why now? Why me? And the world is quick to answer. Everyone has an opinion. Friends offer advice. Strangers post quotes. Social media feeds overflow with catchy slogans that sound wise but rarely heal. But none of that can replace the voice that formed you in your mother's womb. None of it can stand in for the voice that breathed life into your body and purpose into your existence. That voice doesn't just tell you where to go. It tells you who you are. Some of you have been running on empty, not because you've failed, but because you've been disconnected from the very source that sustains you. You've been trying to rebuild your life in your own strength. You've been striving to piece things back together while forgetting the one who said, "Apart from me, you can do nothing." God never intended for you to figure it all out on your own. He never meant for you to carry the weight of your future alone. His heart has always been to lead you, to guide you, to strengthen you, not from a distance, but up close. But He won't shout over the noise. He won't compete for your attention. You must choose Him. And when you do, when you finally quiet the world and seek His face, something begins to shift. You start to hear differently. You start to think differently. Not because your circumstances have changed, but because your connection to the source has been restored. You begin to see your life differently, not through the harsh lens of failure, but through the soft, steady lens of grace. His voice calms your spirit. It reminds you that your worth was never wrapped up in what you lost. Your identity was never rooted in your performance, your position, or your possessions. It has always been found in who you belong to. The world constantly demands, "Prove yourself." God simply says, "Abide in me." The world urges you to hustle harder, climb higher, do more. God invites you to slow down and rest in this truth. Be still and know that I am God. The world tells you to chase after approval, validation, and applause. But God whispers, "You are already chosen." When you reconnect with your source, everything shifts. You stop striving to earn what was already given. You stop chasing and start resting. You begin to trust again, not because everything is fixed, but because you remember who is holding it all together. And it's from that place of peace, not performance, that true rebuilding begins. Not as someone trying to impress the world, but as a son, as a daughter, fully loved, fully seen, led by a father who never once abandoned you. So before you lay down the next brick, before you make the next move, pause. Just pause. Be still. Clear out the noise and tune in, not to the voice of the crowd, not to the echo of your fears, not to the regrets of your past, but to the quiet voice of the one who called you by name. There's something sacred about starting small, something powerful about the quiet beginnings, the unnoticed efforts, the humble steps no one applauds. Why do we so often overlook those moments? We're conditioned to crave quick fixes, dramatic turnarounds, instant success. But God doesn't usually move in flashes of lightning. He moves in rhythms, steady, faithful, purposeful. Rebuilding doesn't happen in one dramatic moment. It happens moment by moment, brick by brick, step by step. It happens through consistency, through obedience, through the little things, the unseen acts of faith, the whispered prayers, the quiet acts of trust, done faithfully over time. And here's what you need to know: the little things matter, often more than you think. We serve a God who formed the stars, who stretched out galaxies with his word, yet still notices the fall of a single sparrow. The same God who created the vastness of the universe also knows the exact number of hairs on your head. So don't ever believe the lie that small steps don't matter. Don't think for a moment that quiet acts of faith, those moments when you keep showing up even when no one else sees, are meaningless. Because they're not. They're building something eternal. Every time you choose faith instead of fear, even when fear seems louder. Every time you choose love over bitterness, even when bitterness feels justified. Every whispered prayer in the middle of the night when your heart is aching. It all matters. It's all being woven into something greater than you can see right now. When you're rebuilding, you have to learn to trust the process. And that's hard, especially when progress feels slow. But remember, God is never in a rush. He is not a God of chaos or shortcuts. He is a God of order, a God of seasons, a God who works in layers. While we're busy pleading with him to finish what we haven't even started, he's gently inviting us to begin, to take one step forward, to do the next right thing, to sow seeds of obedience, even when we haven't seen the harvest yet. Maybe you've looked at your life and thought, it's too broken, too much has been lost, too much damage has already been done. Maybe somewhere along the way, you started believing that it's too late for a fresh start. But hear this, God doesn't need a crowd to start a miracle. He doesn't need perfect conditions. He doesn't need you to have it all figured out or all cleaned up. What he's looking for is a willing heart, a small beginning, a mustard seed of faith that dares to say, God, I trust you. And if you'll place that in his hands, just that little bit, he will take it and do more than you could ever ask, think, or imagine. You don't have to see the whole picture before taking the first step. Sometimes, the healing doesn't begin with a dramatic breakthrough. Sometimes, it begins with a quiet decision to get out of bed, to try again, to forgive one more time, to pray, even when it feels like no one's listening. That's the kind of faith God honors, not the polished, put-together faith that performs for others, but the raw, trembling kind. The faith that says, God, I don't feel strong. I don't have it all together, but I'll trust you anyway. That kind of trust, the kind born in struggle, not spotlight, is what moves mountains. And let me remind you of this. You don't rebuild overnight. This is not a sprint. You rebuild through rhythm, through quiet consistency, through showing up day after day, even when it's hard, even when it's mundane. It's in the little choices, the daily yes, the faithfulness when no one's watching, that real transformation begins. The enemy will whisper, it's not working. You're wasting your time. He'll try to convince you that your prayers are pointless, your obedience unseen. But the word of God says otherwise. Do not grow weary in doing good, for at the proper time you will reap a harvest, if you do not give up. There is promise in your perseverance. There is power in your patience. Every small act of obedience, every tearful prayer, every step forward when you could have given up, it matters. So don't despise your small beginnings. Don't dismiss the days that feel like nothing is shifting. Just because you don't see it yet doesn't mean God isn't working. Some of the most powerful transformation happens underground, where no one sees, where roots are forming, where foundations are being strengthened. You may feel stuck. You may feel invisible, but God is anchoring you. He's preparing you, not just for survival, but for impact. And when the time is right, when the season shifts, what's been growing in the dark will break through into the light. But you've got to keep going, even when you're tired, even when it feels lonely, even when quitting feels easier than trusting. Because the breakthrough doesn't belong to the one who starts with passion and fades when it gets hard. It belongs to the one who endures, who builds brick by brick, who prays when they don't feel it, who keeps stepping forward even when the path isn't clear. That's how you rebuild. That's how legacies are restored. That's how destinies are shaped. Not in the spotlight, not in front of applause, but in the quiet, steady faithfulness of everyday obedience. And let me speak to the one who's been caught comparing your progress to someone else's. Stop. Right now. Their highlight reel is not your behind the scenes. You don't know what they've battled to get where they are. You don't know the nights they've cried themselves to sleep. You don't know the grace they've needed just to get where they are. You haven't seen their silent battles, their private pain, or the strength it took to simply stand. And the truth is, you're not called to walk their path. You're called to walk yours. What God is doing in you is sacred. It's specific. It's unfolding with divine timing, even if you don't fully see it yet. So trust Him. That means showing up. Show up in prayer, even when your voice shakes. Show up in kindness, even when your heart is tired. Show up in discipline, even when motivation is nowhere to be found. Show up when no one is clapping, when no one notices, when you wonder if it even matters. And show up when you don't feel like it, especially then. Because your consistency is more than a routine. It's your testimony. It's the quiet declaration that says, "Life knocked me down, but I didn't stay there. You rose. You moved. You kept going. You kept building." And that is what makes the difference. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Don't wait until you feel completely ready. Begin right here, right now, with whatever you have in your hands. Because when God is your foundation, even the smallest, most hesitant step forward becomes a step into something eternal. Pain changes people. There's no denying that. When life breaks you open, when loss barges in uninvited, when betrayal slices deep, when the dreams you held so tightly fall apart, it leaves a mark. It leaves wounds that may not be visible to the world but ache daily inside your soul. And if we're not careful, we start to believe a dangerous lie, that the pain has the final word. That because something hurt us, it now defines us. That we are what we've been through. But I need you to hear this today. Pain may shape part of your story, but it is not the end of your story. God does not waste pain. He never has. He never will. What broke you doesn't have to bury you. Just because something tried to destroy you doesn't mean it succeeded. In fact, some of the deepest rebuilding you'll ever experience will come through the very things that once tried to take you out. Those scars you carry, they aren't symbols of weakness. They are proof that you survived. They are the evidence that the enemy didn't win. And if you're willing to let God into those wounded places, if you stop hiding the pain and start inviting Him into the brokenness, He will do something only He can do. He'll take your pain and turn it into purpose. Not by erasing the past, but by redeeming it. Not by pretending it didn't hurt, but by showing you that healing is possible even in the middle of the mess. That doesn't mean it will be easy. Healing is not a straight line. It doesn't follow a clean schedule. Some days, you'll feel strong, like you're finally making progress. And then other days, it may feel like you've gone backward, like you're right back where you started. But don't let that discourage you. Healing isn't about never feeling pain again. It's about refusing to let that pain control your next step. It's about learning to walk again, to breathe again, to believe again, even if you walk with a limp. Because faith doesn't require perfection. It just requires movement. Sometimes we pray desperately for God to take the pain away, and He doesn't. Not because He's cruel or distant, but because He's doing something deeper, something eternal. Through the pain, He's shaping you, refining you, building strength, teaching compassion, forging character, deepening trust. You may never have chosen this path, but God can still use it. And when He does, the very thing that once crushed you can become the tool He uses to lift someone else. But you can't rebuild if you're still chained to bitterness. You can't move forward while dragging resentment behind you like a weight. And let's be honest, it's tempting to hold on. It's easy to replay the moment they hurt you, to keep reminding yourself of how unfair it all was. But bitterness doesn't heal wounds. It infects them. It keeps you stuck in the very thing God is trying to free you from. And forgiveness, let's be clear, it doesn't mean what happened was okay. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean pretending it never happened or excusing the pain. It means you've made a decision, a powerful decision, to stop letting that pain poison your soul. It means you're choosing freedom over festering wounds. And for some of you, the person you most need to forgive is yourself. You've been walking under the heavy weight of shame for far too long, carrying guilt for choices you can't undo, replaying moments that God already covered in grace. Maybe you messed up. Maybe you made decisions you deeply regret. But hear this, grace doesn't run out. God's mercy is new every single morning, not just once a year, not just when you feel worthy. Every morning, His mercy stands ready, not because you've earned it, but because He loves you. That's where rebuilding begins, not in striving to be enough, but in surrendering to the truth that He already is. So let the tears fall if they need to. Let the questions come. God can handle it. He's not threatened by your pain. He's not shocked by your doubts. He's not distant from your struggle. He is a Father who runs toward the wounded, not away from them. He's not asking you to put on a brave face. He's not asking you to pretend you're fine. He's asking for something far more powerful. What's real? Bring him the broken pieces, the buried fears, the parts of yourself you've hidden from everyone else. Bring the exhaustion. Bring the silence. Bring it all. Because in his hands, nothing is wasted. There are people walking through life today still bleeding inside, not because the wound was too deep, but because they never brought it to the healer. You can't heal what you won't face, and you were never meant to face it alone. You need the presence of the one who said, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." That's not a suggestion. That's not just comforting poetry. That's a promise. When you begin to hand over your pain to God, he gives you something back in return. He trades your anxiety for assurance, your bitterness for beauty, your fear for faith, and slowly, gently, the person you thought was gone, the version of you thought had been lost forever, starts to rise again. Not untouched, not unchanged, but stronger, wiser, redeemed. Your pain doesn't disqualify you. It prepares you. It shapes you in ways comfort never could. It softens your heart, expands your compassion, and gives you a depth of empathy for others you never had before. That pain you once hid, it becomes the very tool God uses to reach someone else. The same hands that once trembled in weakness can now reach out to lift another. The same voice that once cried out in desperation can now speak healing to the brokenhearted. That's what God does. He specializes in restoration. He turns graves into gardens. He takes what looked like ruin and brings forth beauty. He takes what was meant for evil and, in his perfect timing, uses it for good. And maybe, just maybe, what you went through wasn't only about you. Maybe the pain wasn't punishment. Maybe it was preparation. Maybe God knew that someone out there would need your story. That someone would need your scars to find their own healing. That someone needed proof, not that life is perfect, but that rebuilding is possible. That rising again is possible. And not by your strength, but by his. So don't run from the pain. Don't try to numb it. Don't keep pushing it down, hoping it disappears. Bring it to the cross. Lay it down before the one who carried your sorrow, who understands every ounce of your grief, who knows what it means to be crushed and still rise again in glory. There comes a point in every person's life when you must decide to stop clinging to what was and begin fully embracing what can be. The past may have shaped you, but it does not have to define you. What God has ahead of you is far greater than what lies behind. When you're in the process of rebuilding, one of the hardest yet most necessary steps is learning to release what no longer serves you. That means letting go of old habits, outdated mindsets, toxic patterns, and sometimes even long-standing relationships. The familiar, even when it's painful, can feel oddly safe. We cling to it, not because it's healthy, but because it's what we've always known. But God never called us to live within the walls of comfort. He didn't ask us to walk by what feels predictable. He called us to walk by faith, not by sight. And that kind of faith will often lead you away from what's known and into what's new. You cannot step into a new season if you're still dragging the chains of the past behind you. You can't expect to rise higher while carrying the very weight that once broke you. Something has to be surrendered. And yes, it's hard. There's real grief in letting go. There's fear in walking away from something. Even if that something was painful, because it was yours. It was familiar. It felt like part of you. But here's the truth. God can't fill hands that are still clinging to what he's asked you to release. If you want to receive what's next, you have to be willing to release what was. Sometimes it's not the storm keeping us stuck. It's our refusal to leave the boat. We cry out for change, but don't want to move. We pray for healing, but keep reopening the wound. We say we want freedom, yet we hold on to the chains. There comes a defining point in every journey when you have to ask yourself, do I want comfort or do I want growth? Because you can't have both. Growth will always cost you something. It will cost you the illusion of safety. It will cost you the familiarity of staying the same. It will require that you leave behind what no longer fits where you're going. Some of us are still tuning into voices that God silenced seasons ago. We're allowing echoes from the past to dictate our future. The enemy loves that. He loves to weaponize your past against your calling. He'll whisper every failure, every mistake, every disqualification to make sure you doubt what God has already spoken over you. But here's what I need you to hear, clearly and without question. What God forgives, he also forgets. If he's not holding it over your head, why are you still carrying it on your back? It's time to stop replaying the pain and start releasing it. And that starts by walking away from the identity you built around your wounds. You are not your trauma. You are not your failure. You are not your addiction, your divorce, your bankruptcy, your depression. Those things may have touched your life, but they do not define your identity. They are chapters, not your title. They are moments, not your name. God never called you by your struggle. He doesn't label you by your lowest point. He calls you by your name, and your name is still loved. Your name is still chosen. Your name is still redeemed. Letting go doesn't mean pretending it didn't hurt. It doesn't mean pretending it didn't happen. It means you are no longer letting it control you. It means you've chosen to make peace with what was, so you can finally walk into what is. It means yesterday's pain no longer gets to dictate tomorrow's potential. And here's the hard truth. You can't rebuild the life God is trying to give you if you're still grieving over what He's already removed. Yes, it hurts. Yes, it's confusing. Sometimes God closes doors we believed were meant to stay open. Sometimes He removes people we thought we couldn't live without. Sometimes He moves us into unfamiliar places that don't make sense in the moment. But God sees the full picture. He knows what's ahead, even when we don't. And if He's asking you to let something go, it's not to punish you, it's to prepare you. Because what He has for you is greater than what you're trying to hold on to. Right now, it might not look like it. You may feel like your hands are empty, like you've lost more than you've gained. But maybe, just maybe, that emptiness is exactly what God needs. Because empty hands are ready hands. And surrendered hearts are the ones He fills. God can do more with your surrender than He ever could with your control. And when you finally release it, when you genuinely say, "Lord, I trust You more than I trust my own plan," that's when something shifts. That's when peace begins to flood your heart. Not because the situation is fixed, but because you are being rebuilt. That's when real freedom enters your soul. Not just the kind that lifts a burden off your shoulders, but the kind that breathes life into your spirit. That's when true rebuilding begins, from the inside out. For some of you, today is the day to break ties with your past. And not just physically, spiritually, emotionally, deep down where the roots have been buried. It's time to renounce the shame, release the bitterness, refuse to accept the lies that have followed you for far too long. You need to stand up and say, boldly and clearly, "You don't get to tell my story anymore." Because the truth is, you've been bought with a price. Your life no longer belongs to the pain, the regret, or the labels of the past. Your life belongs to the one who makes all things new. There's a divine reset waiting for you, just on the other side of obedience. A new identity, a renewed purpose, a deeper, unshakable confidence. But it all begins with a choice, a decision to move forward, even when all the pieces don't yet make sense. You've got to choose to close some chapters without needing all the answers. You have to be willing to walk by faith, even if your heart still carries questions. Because the same God who brought you this far hasn't brought you this far to leave you. He's not done with your story. Rebuilding isn't just about adding more. It's about letting go of what no longer fits where you're going. It's about clearing out the clutter, the fear, the pride, the unforgiveness, so God can begin building something new, something holy, something beautiful in its place. And if you're willing, if you're truly ready to release what was and trust Him with what's next, you'll begin to see what felt like the end was never the end at all. It was just the beginning. Your future doesn't need the weight of your past to be beautiful. Wishing you strength, healing, and happiness on your journey. And don't forget to subscribe to Mindset Daily for more content to inspire and empower your life.